Ready? Yeah.
What up, Shredder? There comes a time in every snowboarder's life when it's time to learn how to hit a jump. Yes, the one thing that is sure to strike fear into almost every snowboarder's heart and get them excited at the same time. The key to getting high off adrenaline, the stepping stone to grabs, 180s, 360s, 900s, and backflips, the first step to ripping the park. The only problem is most of us are terrified, and we don't want to wreck ourselves and end our season just to catch a little air. Today, we're going to talk about how to safely hit jumps even if you've never hit one before. If you want to get first notifications of all the new videos, go ahead, subscribe to our channel and hit notifications right now. That's going to make sure you never miss a video. I have seen my dad in his 50s after he just started snowboarding learn to hit jumps. I've seen my girlfriend, her first year riding, crush it off jumps. All kinds of people and all kinds of riders can hit jumps if you just start small and you work your way up. Don't roll up to the biggest jump in the park and go big or go home. That's how you go home on a stretcher and never want to hit a jump again. The key to hitting jumps is safely working your way up from the smallest possible jump to the 80-footer you've been eyeing up in the park. Now, hitting jumps could encompass anything from hitting a side hit to launching off a cliff or sending it over a huge park jump. The good news is they're all relatively the same, and once you start to learn one of these, they will all come more naturally. So first, let's talk about some key terms that you need to learn. A side hit, or as we used to call it, a cut-up, is a jump on the side of a run, usually that has been formed by riders cutting in and out of the run. A park jump is located in the terrain park and usually has a takeoff, also called a kicker, a table, the flat part in the middle of the jump, and the landing where the jump slopes downward. The very edge of the takeoff is called the lip. Most of the time we want to jump from the lip of a jump to the landing and clear the jump, which means we've aired over the entire table or deck, the flat part up top. If we go too slow and we land just before the landing, we say that we cased the jump or we undershot the jump. If we land on the very edge between the table and the landing, we land on the knuckle, or we say we knuckled the jump. We might also say that we came up short, landed on the deck, or decked out. Depending on how far up the knuckle we land, this could be a minor inconvenience or completely devastating. What we're aiming for is to clear the jump, to hit the tranny, the sweet spot, or the landing of the jump. Transition or tranny refers to a downward slope that will disperse our momentum safely after coming down from our airtime. If we go too fast and we go past the landing, we say that we overshot the jump or bottomed out. Depending on the size of the jump, this can be very dangerous. Getting the speed right is crucial to staying safe on jumps, and we'll dive into that in a minute. Lastly, a straight air means that we're going straight over the jump and not spinning or flipping. Okay, now that we understand the terminology, let's dive into how to hit jumps. There are a couple prereqs here. The first reason most people suck at hitting jumps is that they never learn to ollie. This teaches us the proper way to pop off a jump with our tail leaving the lip last. If you skip the ollie, you're going to hop off jumps and you're going to eat it. Learn to ollie first and jumps are going to be so much easier. If you haven't learned to ollie yet, go watch the video in Shred School on how to ollie. The second thing you need to learn before hitting jumps is how to ride in a straight line. Some of us have never ridden down the hill without being on an edge before, and the minute we start to go fast in a straight line, we freak out. This is going to cause all kinds of problems with jumps, so before you even get started on this, learn to ride in a straight line, then come to a stop. Ride in a straight line and then stop. This is going to get you comfortable riding up to the jump and landing straight off the jump. Next, before we ever hit a jump, we need to get comfortable with changes in pitch. A jump is kind of like a roller coaster. It goes up steeply and then down steeply. If all you've ever ridden is flat terrain, this is going to be weird. Luckily, we can get comfortable with this before ever hitting a jump. The first step is to start riding blue squares and black diamonds with rollers on the run. After riding straight over the rollers a few times, we can start to ollie off the rollers and even throw in a grab if we want. This is great practice for the pitch changes on an actual jump. You can substitute side hits for rollers here and get the same effect. Once you've practiced riding straight, learn to ollie, and practice jumping off rollers and side hits, it's time to head into the park. The first thing we want to do is scope out the jumps before hitting them. We don't want to mess around with jumps as they have very real consequences. We're looking to see how big the jumps are, make sure we understand each feature, and get a feel for the speed. So you can roll over the jumps and stop on the knuckle and look at the jump. You can watch a couple people hit it from the deck. Just be sure to stay off to the side so no one lands on you. Next, we roll over the jump and throw a little ollie over the knuckle. This will give us the feeling of hitting the jump without taking any risk. If you can confidently do that, it's time to hit your first jump. Next, run through the park, roll up to the drop-in of the jump, and spot someone who looks like they know what they're doing, and ask them what the speed is. There's nothing wrong with asking what the speed is, even pro riders do this. It's one of the most important parts of hitting jumps. That's because our best bet of never getting hurt on jumps is to get our speed right. Even if we wreck, if we land in the sweet spot on the landing, we're usually going to be okay. People get hurt when they undershoot and land on the knuckle, or overshoot and land in the flat. And that's because there's no pitch to disperse all of the force when we're coming down from the air. If you remember one thing to stay safe, it's this: land in the actual landing with your board hitting the ground first at all costs. Most injuries can be prevented by following these two rules. Now, there's a couple more terms you need to know before we get into it. A setup carve refers to taking a carve into the jump, similar to a heel-toe approach on a backside 360 or a straight air. A setup carve slows you down a little, but not much. It mainly is just setting up for the trick. Now, a speed check is where we intentionally slash a little bit of speed by pushing out our edge a little more on a setup carve to slow down. This is going to slow us down before we take off on the lip. An answer you might expect to get for how are the jumps today, or how fast are the jumps, or how's the speed is setup carve into jump 1, speed check for jump number 2, and point it for jump 3. This would mean that you can turn into jump 1, you can turn twice into jump 2, and you better not scrub any speed for jump 3 or you won't make it over. Remember, our goal is to land in the sweet spot, which is just past the knuckle, giving us the softest possible landing and keeping our speed up as fast as possible for the next jump. The key to this is using the right approach. Generally for jumps, I'm going to take a heel to toe approach for a straight air over a jump, which means I come in slightly on my heels on the right side of the jump and I switch to my toes to go straight up the jump, slightly on my toe edge. This makes it easier to pop and maintain my balance off the lip. You can also go flat based off the jump with the same approach. If you have the wrong approach to the jump, you might start to feel squirrely or slide around, so it's really important that you get this right so you can grip that edge going straight off the jump. Once we start to ride up the ramp of a jump, we want to preload our legs by bending slightly more in the approach and popping just as our board is leaving the lip. This is kind of like an ollie, but it's less exaggerated than an ollie you would do on the flat ground. If we watch it in slow motion, we'll see that our tail is still the last thing to leave the lip, and it's propelling us into the air. Depending on how much air we need to get to the landing, we can pop harder or softer to get more or less air time. When I'm taking off on a jump, I'm staring directly down at my snowboard to make sure it goes straight off the lip, and then I'm popping at the right time. I'm not looking too far ahead of me in the air. I'm not looking for the landing while I'm still on the takeoff. Taking off is kind of like jumping on a trampoline. Imagine doing a small bounce versus a large bounce on a trampoline. If you want to go higher, you're going to need to push off the trampoline a little harder. Jumps work the same way. If we just ride right off the jump without popping, we might not go very high, but if we load up our legs and we pop hard, we're going to go a lot higher. Now off a jump, this almost feels like a pump with a snap at the end. So I don't care if I'm straight airing, I'm doing a frontside 3 or a cab 9, I'm going to ollie and I'm snapping that tail off the lip. When you start to do spins and hit bigger jumps, the lack of an ollie is going to cause you to scrub speed off the lip, and you're going to wreck a lot more often, especially when you're spinning. Now the moment you pop, you don't want to start thinking about the landing. This is what most beginners do, and they freak out in the air, they go over the nose of their snowboard, and they otherwise ruin their air time. And I know this because I've been there. I remember learning to hit big jumps, and it really freaked me out in the air because I was looking for the landing as soon as I took off. we want to focus on landing or leveling out at the peak of our air time, which means at the highest point in our jump, we want to just focus on getting to that point and leveling out there. If we can do that, then we're just naturally going to float down to the landing, ready to land. So this is all about taking off on the lip, being completely centered and balanced when you come off, and avoiding any small tilts to the left or the right, so that you just come off nice and level in the air. You level out in the middle and you can come down to the landing. Depending on the size of the jump, adding a grab here can make it a lot easier to stay stable in the air. It can also help keep our shoulders in line over our snowboard, which is going to make sure that we don't accidentally spin. Once you're stable in the air, then look straight down at the landing. Assuming it looks like you're going to land in the landing, you can slightly extend your legs just before you land and then bend them on impact. Make sure that you don't straighten out your legs in the air. You want to keep them bent, okay? A common beginner mistake is they straighten out those legs because they're looking for the landing, but just keep your legs slightly bent and you can extend them a very little right before you land. I like to land slightly on my tail to absorb the impact, and then I'm just going to ride straight out of the jump before setting up for the next one. You want to aim to land flat-based on the landing, as landing in an edge can scrub your speed or cause you to spin out. To do this, keep your shoulders over your board, look ahead of you, and make sure that you're confident riding in a straight line before you ever hit jumps. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you've just landed your first park jump. Now, there's a whole host of things that can go wrong here. The first thing I recommend to prevent anything going wrong is start on the smallest possible jump and master it before moving up to a bigger jump. So I don't mean hit it a couple times and then go hit the big jumps. I mean, get very comfortable hitting the jump over and over again. You should be able to land it clean 9 out of 10 times before thinking about moving up to a bigger jump. The next thing that goes wrong is speed. Now, the more you hit jumps, the more you'll get an intuitive sense of how fast you should be going. The best thing you can do initially is to ask someone what the speed is and observe other people hitting the jump before you do. How high up did they start? How many turns did they take before the jump? Did they go straight in, or did they scrub speed before getting there? You can also roll over the jump without hitting it to judge the speed yourself. Now, make sure that your snowboard is waxed and performing so that your speed doesn't drastically differ from someone else hitting the jump. So, once we get to doing tricks over jumps, a fresh wax can make the difference between hitting the landing and hitting your face off your knee on the knuckle. So make sure your snowboard is fast. Now, hitting jumps takes 100% commitment. That means you're either hitting the jump or you're not. Either one is fine, but there's no in between. Don't do it bended here and stop on the jump last second with me riding right behind him. I ended up knuckling this jump pretty bad. Once you know the speed, you have to commit to that speed. Deciding at the last minute to give an extra speed check or getting scared is only going to cause you to come up short, and it's going to hurt. Don't be stupid here, okay? Once you're on the takeoff, there's no turning. We're in this for the long haul. Now, if you find yourself going up the jump and you can tell that you're going too slow by just a little bit, you can either try to cut all the speed and go down the backside of the lip, or you can pop harder to make it over the jump. If you're going too fast, you can pop less and absorb the jump, and it's going to cut your air time so you don't go too far. Another thing people do is they land sketchy on jump number 1, they lose all their speed, and they still try to hit jump number 2, and they come up short. So if you've lost your speed, just skip the next jump, ride next to it. You can even front flip off the knuckle if you want to. Now, the way that you'll break bones on jumps is the combination of losing your feet out from under you and landing on the knuckle or landing in the flats. This is exactly how I broke my back. I landed on the knuckle with my back first. My feet were straight up in the air. So if you can avoid these two things, always have your snowboard hit the ground first and always hit the sweet spot in the landing. I know it's easier said than done, but if you can do those two things, the chances of you getting hurt are much lower. Even if you get 1 out of 2, the chances of not getting hurt are a lot better. Like if I had landed on my back in the landing, I wouldn't have broke it. It was only because I knuckled. Now, this could be hard for some people to hear, but if you do wreck in the landing, and this is very important, unless you are paralyzed, get up and ride off to the side of the jump. I don't care if the wind is knocked out of you. I don't care if you broke your wrist or you're dazed or you hit your head. Pick your body weight up onto your snowboard and scoot off to the side. And this is because if you don't, you risk someone landing on you from 30 feet up, which could be a lot worse than the injury that you just got. So when I injured myself, I was able to pick myself up and get to the side of the jump before collapsing in pain on the ground. But by then I was out of the way of any other rider coming. So you want to have an instinctual, urgent reaction to get out of the way on jumps. If you're laying in the landing, you should be worried because no one can see you from the top. The next thing that goes wrong is hopping or jumping off the lip instead of popping off the tail. Just don't do this. I don't care if you're hitting a small park jump or an 80-foot booter, you should be popping off your tail, okay? If you hop off the jump, it causes you to take off all at once. Instead of letting your tail finish taking off, you're going to lose the snap, which sends you in the air, and you're going to be more likely to come up short or lose your balance in the air. If you can't pop off jumps, you need to practice rolling off of rollers and popping off side hits over and over again, and you'll start to get the feel for it. Now, some people say that the kickers where they ride are very steep at the top, and no matter how hard they try to stay centered, they always land on their back. They struggle to keep their weight over their board. I can almost guarantee that these people haven't practiced repeatedly popping off rollers and side hits and small jumps, okay? If you just practice those things over and over again, when you start to get to bigger jumps, you're going to be able to handle that pop. Now, it happens to the best of us that we don't realize how steep a jump is and it throws our legs out from under us. So the other thing you can do here is you can absorb with your knees. If this still doesn't work, you should practice skateboarding. And if you practice riding transition on a skateboard, that's really going to help with your awareness of steep transitions. The other thing to watch out for on jumps is changing conditions. Snow, wind, sun, and ice all change the speed of the jump. To talk about breaking my back one more time, the reason this happened was the sun went behind the clouds, it got colder, and the slushy takeoff froze and it created ruts. And it was a really steep takeoff, and I was riding up switch and I caught my heel edge in one of these frozen ruts. Now, I've also lost contests before because I was the last run because I qualified first. That means I get to ride last in the actual contest. The sun went down and then the jump sped up and I overshot the third jump. So in general, I only ride big jumps if it's sunny, it's clear visibility, and there's low wind. Now, the exception to this is riding contests, where I often find myself casing a jump on a cab 9 because it's snowing and cursing myself for even showing up. It's just not a good idea to ride park jumps in snow and wind. Now, I don't want to scare you with all of this because jumps are amazing and they're fun and they're safe if you approach them correctly. I just want to make sure you're prepared and acting responsibly. I see far too many people never learn to hit jumps because they don't work their way up. You don't have to go hit the biggest jump in the park right away. Start extremely small and just practice that over and over again. Only after you've mastered the small jumps should you move up to the next size jumps. Master those by practicing over and over again, and we can do this the whole way up to hitting the biggest possible jumps. I should mention here that straight airs, once you've mastered jumping, are actually a lot harder than spinning over a jump. That's because it's easier to go off balance in the air with all that time just staring at the landing. I actually prefer to spin over big jumps, and I'm kind of terrified to straight air really large jumps. I'd rather do a backside 360. Now, jumps are pure adrenaline. They give you a power-up meter. Often hitting one jump can give you the confidence to try that trick that you're scared of on the next one. I know my entire attitude changes once I get some adrenaline flowing, and it's on. I go into beast mode, and you can too. If I'm tired or I'm bored or I want to call it, and I get in the park and I hit a couple jumps, my adrenaline spikes, all of a sudden I am ready to shred. So go out there, hit your first small jump, work your way up, let us know how it goes, grab a shot of you catching that airtime for the gram, and keep going. Until next time, peace out, Shredder.